Hmm. Jonathan, do I go hard on the Halloween stuff or do I wait until next weekend? Yeah, I think I'm going to wait till next weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a better week next week, why not? We're live, we're rolling. Mr. Lidskin's back on site in Columbia. I am home at my wonderful Berman family abode here in the great state of New Jersey, but this is week 8 of uSTADIUM's uNIVERSITY, and this is not a good week of college football. Let's get it out of the way.
Yeah, no, it's probably the worst week of the season.
It is not great at all. That being said, the advantage to a not very great week of college football means that it's probably a little bit easier to pick. Probably a little bit easier to bet on because there's not that many coin flip games. Of course, you look ahead to next week before we get into this week, and I mean, man, you have the 2 elimination games in the Big Ten. You have Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. There's definitely more that I'm missing.
Yeah, the
Ole Miss Auburn is big.
Ole Miss Auburn's next week and Georgia Florida's next week. I know in terms of ranking, that's not going to be the greatest game, but always fun when those two play. One of the only like 3 games in college football annually played at a neutral site.
Yeah, Texas and Baylor is always a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just keep looking. Next week's really the Big Ten's week to shine. But we go back to this week right now. Whose week is it to shine? Well, it certainly is not the Pac-12's based on last night. Arizona almost beat Washington. I didn't stay up for it, but
no, I thought Arizona had it. I was busy, so I was kind of just like following along, checking the score every once in a while. But Arizona went up, I think, was 16-7.
16-7. They were up 13-zip.
And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, it's a Friday night. Weird things happen. I'm like, this is a perfect recipe for Arizona to get their first win. And then I checked late last night, right before I'm about to go to sleep. I'm like, holy cow, Washington won this one.
Well, what's the moral of the story here? Whether you're a college athletic director or an NFL GM, don't hire coaches that are from the Belichick tree. And that does not just apply.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to ever work.
They don't work. The 2 that everyone was saying, hey, they might work, and Joe Judge and Brian Flores, they're both 1-5 this year. So no, they don't work.
And you want to even go further, Matt Patricia was fired last year.
Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniel, Bill O'Brien is the greatest Belichick head coach of all time. Think about it.
That's saying something.
Okay. Let's get into the games, and I'm going to get into my first pick because this is, oddly enough, a game that I've had circled on the calendar for a few weeks. It's Wake Forest at Army.
Interesting.
First time in quite some time that a Power 5 program's made it up to West Point. Army, they lost, but they did cover last week against Wisconsin. Army runs the ball quite well. Wake Forest does not defend the run very well. And I think about the atmosphere. I think about I'm going to go with Army, and that's the first game that I'm going to pick. So I forget if I picked them head-to-head. I did. So give me Black Knights over the Demon Deacons. Wake Forest is due for a loss, and this is a good place to get that loss.
I look at this game, and the spread only being 3 points is concerning. Like, you think about Wake Forest, they're an undefeated Power 5 team going to an independent team that's not Notre Dame and BYU. You'd think they pretty much have this wrapped up, but Wake Forest being only -3 on the road against Army, team that runs the ball very well, like you
I'm not sold.
It's very telling, and I agree with you on this one. I think Wake Forest perfect season ends today,
and thus any chance that a ACC team makes it into the college football playoff probably dies today too.
Mm-hmm. In all seriousness, if Wake runs the table and finishes the season 13-0 with an ACC championship, I'm not sure that's enough to get in.
Undefeated Power 5, if that isn't, then that's ridiculous.
Yeah, but they pretty much played a group of 5 schedule.
That's fair.
So I think that's how they'll be treated.
I'll get more into the ACC in a bit, but moving on, Penn State, this is kind of their tune-up game before next week. They have Illinois. And Illinois, the Bielema hire is starting to look really bad really quickly.
Mm-hmm. And granted, he hasn't had much time, but just with some of the comments he's been making lately, he pretty much came out last week and said, like, we don't have the talent to win right now. And in my opinion, that's just the opposite way to get guys to buy into your program and believe. But, this could be a tricky one for Penn State. We saw a team just 2 years ago struggle with Illinois and lose the week before Ohio State, and that was Wisconsin. Granted, they were in Champaign for that one. But, this is the one I would stay away from betting-wise just because of what's at stake for Penn State next week.
Penn State is favored by 24. There's no way I didn't pick this game. There's no way Illinois loses by more than 24. I don't see it. Don't see it.
Probably not. I'm with you there.
You want to hear a tricky game? I could see a scenario where Northwestern gives Michigan some problems.
Yeah, Northwestern's a tricky program, and they seem to alternate every year with how good they are. They made the Big Ten championship 2018, down year in 2019, and then they make the Big Ten championship last year. Now it seems they're headed towards another down year. No bowl, only at 3 wins right now. But we talk about trap games. Michigan's got to go to Spartan Stadium next week, a team that they've struggled with previously in previous years. So this one, similar to how Penn State gets Illinois at home this week, could be a tricky one.
Okay. Does Oklahoma cover at KU? The spread 38.5.
Oklahoma seems to have found their form. They're going to run the ball really well. I think they cover. Do. I could see something like 55-3, 55-7, something like that.
I think Oklahoma covers. I also think Cincinnati covers against a terrible Navy team. Cincinnati favored by 28. I'm actually going to see the Bearcats in person next week against Tulane, so I'm excited for that.
Interesting. You want to get a chance to see a team with college football playoff aspirations and a team that ends up playing in the college football playoff. But yeah, like you said, Navy is a terrible football team. The only way I think they cover in this game is if they get to string together a couple nice possessions with their ball control, triple option offense.
Wisconsin and Purdue, that game at 3 o'clock kick Eastern time. First game in years that the Boilermakers are ranked.
Yeah, and they're not even favored in it.
They're not favored in it. I think I might have picked Wisconsin in this game. I picked Purdue. Excuse me. What am I saying? Yeah, I picked Purdue. I don't think Wisconsin's a very good football team.
I don't either, but Purdue tends to play well against Iowa for whatever reason. And it's kind of a hangover game for them after probably the second biggest win in their program history, I'd say.
I see it. I think we see West Lafayette rock this weekend.
And this is a team now that has aspirations to play in the Big Ten championship. But with that being said, I think this is a major hangover game for Purdue, and I'm going to take Wisconsin in this one. Okay. I may regret that. Wisconsin has been just terrible lately, but I'll take the Badgers.
Okay, before we get into my next pick, do we know if Matt Corral is playing this week or not?
I haven't heard anything on whether he's not playing, so I would assume he is.
Because that is going to directly impact who I pick in this game.
Well, yeah, obviously. He's obviously the heart and soul of their team. He's going to end up probably being a Heisman finalist with how he's played this season. But yeah, I've heard absolutely nothing about his status. So
silence coming from the Ole Miss camp, but I'll put it out here right now. If Matt Corral is playing, I pick Ole Miss to win. If Matt Corral not playing, LSU pulls the upset. It's that simple.
Yeah, LSU's offense is definitely potent enough that if Corral isn't playing, I think they win the game.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
We've had
beautiful.
So we had this a couple weeks ago happen to us where I said JT Daniels was going to have a great week, and then it came out right before game time that he wasn't playing. So yeah, I agree with you on this one. Matt Corral plays, Ole Miss is going to win with ease. This LSU team really nothing to play for. Their season's gone downhill. Their coach is being fired, but for some reason finishing the season. I don't understand what they're doing with that. But
Hold the upset over Florida last week, so it's
yeah, he
not.
Corral's the heart and soul of their team. So if he plays, they win.
Here's an upset I do have. Yeah, I don't even think it's an upset. I think Vegas has Pitt as favorites. They do.
Mm-hmm. And I bet Pitt this week.
As did I. I'm taking the Panthers to win against, I think, a pretty bad Clemson team.
Yeah, they really struggle offensively and can't move the ball. That total is really low for a Clemson pick game at 47 with how historically good their offenses have been the last couple of years at least. I'm going to say this, and I know Clemson played Georgia week 1. This is the best quarterback that Clemson's faced this season in Kenny Pickett. He's playing himself into not only Heisman conversation, but a first-round pick. And I think this Pitt team's going to be able to move the ball against Clemson a little bit, and they're going to score some points today, at least enough to cover that 3.5.
I am a huge supporter of the Kenny Pickett bandwagon. I've been a fan of him since he beat UCF a couple of years ago. And we're really starting to see this guy turn into, I don't know if he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, but he's one of those guys that definitely reminds me almost of like a Daniel Jones kind of player where he just sort of rises up the ranks right at his senior season.
Yeah, I have a friend at Pitt that texted me a couple days ago that he bought a Kenny Pickett for Heisman shirt. And I told him it was a good investment. He's playing his way into that conversation.
Here's a conversation, one that we were actually having before this. Oklahoma State does not have a good history playing up in Ames.
No, and really nobody does.
Which is why I believe I have Oklahoma State covering the 7, but losing.
Okay, so this is a weird game because when do you ever see a top 10 team as a touchdown dog against an unranked team? Whether that's
Vegas knows something.
on the road or um whether that's on the road or at home, it's just weird. You never see a top 10 team as a dog period against an unranked team.
No, I think Oklahoma State covers that. I also
Yeah,
don't think they win.
yeah, it's a lot of points, and Oklahoma State's defense is good, but let me remind you, this Iowa State team right around right now, last season is when they started playing really well and started winning a lot of football games.
Brees Hall still exists.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think like my my heart tells me that Oklahoma State's gonna go into Bedlam undefeated, and we're gonna get a game for the ages there. But my head tells me Iowa State wins this one, and while it's a lot of points, and I think Oklahoma State's gonna end up covering, I think Iowa State wins a close football game.
that's about where I am. Okay, another game on the docket. This is the game of the week. Oregon and UCLA. UCLA favored by a point. I think UCLA pulls this off.
Yeah, again, it's another really rare scenario where you have a top 10 team as an underdog against an unranked team. I still like UCLA. They slipped up a couple times. Excuse me.
Couple twice.
Yeah, once against Fresno State. Once a couple weeks ago against a good Arizona State team. But I still believe in this team. They play physical on the line. I think they're one of the only teams in the Pac-12 that can match up with Oregon physically and with speed. I think UCLA wins this one today to get to bowl eligible.
But you also have to remember, what do you do about Kayvon Thibodeau? Because last week against Cal, he finally started looking like Kayvon Thibodeau.
Mm-hmm.
How do you defend that?
Yeah, I mean,
You don't.
he pretty much he's not as good as a prospect as Chase Young was, but I would give him the Chase Young treatment. Double teams, pulling guards, just anything you really can to disrupt him. Because if he's a free rusher and he's getting pressures, you're not going to do much offensively.
I got some more words on Thibodeau after we're done here. Tennessee and Alabama, that game 7 o'clock tonight. ESPN. Alabama favored by 25. I think Tennessee, after the way they lost last week, they come out just dead. I think the balls are dead on arrival.
I kind of think the opposite. I think they're going to be like this Bama defense isn't as good as we thought it was going to be. And I think Tennessee could score a little bit. Their offense has been clicking the last couple of weeks. And even after that disaster at Neyland Stadium last week,
That's understating it.
I think Tennessee goes out and covers today.
You think Tennessee covers? I don't have that game picked. So
it's a big spread. Like,
yeah,
if you're going to take a side of the line, I would not take Alabama just because of how many points it is. But the line has moved a full 2.5, 3 points towards Tennessee this week.
it has.
So
here's a surprise team: 7-0, University of Texas, San Antonio. They're favored by 6 over Louisiana Tech. UTSA is ranked, and I believe they're headed to the AAC after this, aren't they?
yeah, I believe so as well. This is a pleasant surprise from a group of 5 team this year. I don't think. Listen, we have a lot of good group of 5 teams this year. I don't think UTSA is going to end up playing in a New Year's Six Bowl or anything, but they're a fun story, and they're sitting at 7-0. I think they make it 8-0 today with a win against Louisiana Tech.
Speaking of undefeated group of 5 teams, San Diego State against 6-1 Air Force. That is a sneaky good game tonight.
Yeah, it is, and I think Air Force is going to win this one. Actually,
Harry has found us the new definition now that Coastal Carolina has lost. We'll get to that one in a second. A Roadrunner also. Oh my goodness.
How about that?
How about those Texas A&M Aggies as well? I think they win handily over a bad South Carolina team. No concerns there.
Yeah, this is a South Carolina team that I'm kind of hoping Mizzou can beat later this season. But yeah, it feels like A&M kind of found their form with that win against Alabama. They're running the ball well now, and this is a team that, but believe it or not, I checked it last week. They're still in the race in the SEC West.
They are. I don't know if Alabama wins another or loses another game before that point, but curious to see what happens.
Yeah, no, the SEC West late in the season could get very interesting.
It could. I also have NC State covering tonight against Miami. Only 3.5 favorites. Weird.
So, this I was debating taking this. It seems almost too obvious to take. Like I almost feel like Vegas knows something. NC State's a 5-1 team. Their only loss came early in the season to Mississippi State. They're undefeated in ACC play, and Miami hasn't won an ACC game yet. So even playing at Miami, where the stadium's not going to be very, very full at Hard Rock, like it seems
Miami see it.
It seems almost like too obvious. I would stay away from this one.
I'll believe in Miami when I see it. Yeah, I can't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
USC and Notre Dame. That's another interesting game. Notre Dame favored by 7. Notre Dame's looking to keep their chances for a New Year's Six Bowl alive. And while I think Notre Dame wins the game, my NFL draft nerd side of me is going to be very excited to watch Drake London and Kyle Hamilton match up.
Yeah, Drake London has maybe been the most underrated college football player this year, period, at any position. I know he's the number 1 graded PFF receiver. And USC, well, they've kind of disappointed this year, firing Clay Helton after the week 2 loss against Stanford. They always seem to keep this game close against Notre Dame when it's not expected. I think back to 2018, that when they played the last week of the season at USC, and USC with a freshman quarterback and JT Daniels was with them the entire way, and that wasn't even a bowl eligible USC team. So I think this one could be interesting. I think the fact that the spread is only 7 is very telling, and I think this could be a sneaky one to watch out for.
See, I feel the exact opposite. I I don't believe in USC. I don't believe in their game management skills. I think they're an infinitely better coach team. Jonathan, where'd you go?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
It looked like you just vanished into the ether, but that's why I've taken the Irish -7 to cover. Ohio State, Indiana. That's the last ranked matchup of the weekend.
So
State -21. That sounds about right.
Indiana's really bad, and Ohio State has a stretch where they play at Indiana, then Penn State next week, at Nebraska. Then they get Michigan State at home. They go to Michigan, and then a potential Big Ten championship. I've said this for the past couple weeks now with this slate coming up for them. I think they lose another game. I don't as good as they've been playing. That slate's just too hard with the amount of tricky road games and just good teams you have in there. I think they lose another one before bowl season. But this is a team that is still very much in the playoff race and could potentially win the Big Ten and get into the playoff.
Yeah, I agree with you. Ohio State's getting scary again, but I do see them losing another game at some point. I just don't know when. It's not going to be this week. That's for sure.
No, I don't think so. Like Nebraska in a couple weeks is a tricky one. Obviously, Penn State's a really good football team when they're healthy.
I think they lose to Michigan State.
It's weird because Michigan State's beaten them recently at the shoe.
Like, is that in East Lansing or is it in Columbus?
No, that game's in the shoe, but like they have a bunch of like weird trap games and hangover games like combined the next couple weeks because their schedule is just so hard the last 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I don't. That Ohio State's. I mean, Nebraska stands out for me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
it does to me too because like Ohio State's lost these kind of games before, and Nebraska, it feels like they're so close to just getting over the edge. They almost beat Michigan a couple weeks ago. They go to overtime with Michigan State. Like they've been right there for quite some time now. And I know Scott Frost's record in one possession games at Nebraska says what it says, but I still believe that they're like so close to getting over the edge.
I'll give you a better one. I think Ohio State recognizes that Nebraska's a trap game. I think they sleep on Purdue.
Yeah, I mean that could be a tough one too. Like Purdue's ranked right now, so.
And you know what? I have to say it. Good on College Game Day for waiting on Ohio State until this back half of the season.
Yeah, and I think that they did the same thing with Alabama. I think, and I don't necessarily agree with the Bama one, even though the Ole Miss game ended up being really bad. But I think they're gonna wait to go to Bama as well, and that was a good choice.
Well, they've obviously bought all their Georgia stock. Next week they're gonna have to go to a Big Ten game.
Yeah, next week seems like they're gonna go to Ohio State.
Next week they're going to Columbus because that's the Fowler Herbst.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, I was so excited about that. ESPN hasn't gotten that game in, I believe, 3 years now, since 2018.
ESPN has not gotten it in Columbus. They get it in Happy Valley almost.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right.
But, okay, if Kansas wins against Oklahoma, what will I do? I mean, that hasn't even crossed my mind yet.
I mean,
if Kansas wins against Oklahoma, I will wear a Jayhawk shirt to the next university. There, put it down. I will wear a Jayhawk. I will wear something KU related that I will buy with my own money for the next university.
You know, I'll join in on that. I'll do that as well.
Rock Chalk. Download the app. Subscribe to us on YouTube. But back to Ohio State. Michigan State that's in Columbus, but I think this is the year that Michigan gets it done. I really, really, really do.
See, like, these are always the years that they draw you into it. Like, FPI gives Michigan a 42% chance to win, which is all you could ask for. against Ohio State, right? Like Jim Harbaugh hasn't beaten them. They haven't really been close since I believe it was 2017
The overtime game?
when Ohio State went to um, Ann Arbor as a top 10 team, and Michigan was unranked, and Michigan had them on the ropes until Dwayne Haskins came in the game. But you're right. This does feel like a year that Michigan has a shot, and that just makes me less and less confident every week. Like I said it a couple weeks ago that Michigan was going to beat them, and now I'm reversing that. I think Ohio State beats them. I think Ohio State has a better chance to lose at Nebraska or to Penn State than to Michigan. It just feels like they always get up for that game, no matter what the stakes are and how good either team is.
Interesting. Now, before I get into my main topic of the week, I do want to bring up that the longest FBS win streak has fallen at 18 games. The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers on a Wednesday night at Appalachian State. And there's your definition. And, you know, it stinks. I was rooting for them the whole way, but
Yeah, no, it would have been cool for them to finish undefeated, but that's why we got UTSA now.
it is true. But they don't have mullets, and their nickname is not the Chanticleers. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Stings. It really does. Okay. On to the main topic of the week. Who are your 3 Heisman finalists right now?
Okay, so
This is a tough year. It is a tough year to pick a Heisman finalist.
it doesn't really feel like a quarterback has stood out this year.
No, because the quarterback hasn't stood out.
And as much as I hate how this works, like winning does matter in the Heisman Trophy race. And so my winner right now is I sat there and I'm like, best player on the best unit in the country, and that's Jordan Davis for Georgia.
Who
So
was the last defensive lineman to get put in the Heisman conversation?
like Chase Young would have if he didn't get suspended, but Ndamukong Suh maybe.
Ndamukong Suh was a Heisman finalist, was he
Yeah,
not?
like that's the first one that comes to mind is him for Nebraska. But like I don't think Jordan Davis is going to get the hype, especially as a defensive tackle and not defensive end. But he's been the best player on the best unit of the country, so he's who I would give it to right now.
Yeah, he was a finalist, but he lost out to. Who did he lose out to?
I forget what year he won.
He lost it to Mark Ingram.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, like Mark Ingram really shouldn't have won that Heisman anyway.
Can
So
you name the 3 other finalists for the 2009 Heisman?
can I name them?
Yes.
Toby Gerhart was a Heisman finalist that year.
Was
And I know he should have won the award. So it was Ingram, Gerhart, Sue. I don't know the other one.
2 quarterbacks.
Oh, two others. Yeah, I'm drawing blanks right now.
Colt McCoy.
Okay.
Tebow.
Oh, okay. Tebow I should have gotten. Colt McCoy, just no chance I was getting that one. But no, to continue, my 3 other 2 Heisman finalists would be I'll go Matt Corral. I think he's been the best quarterback in the country this year. His team still has a shot to win the SEC West. As long as I think if they have to win out and Auburn beats Bama, which isn't out of the realm. I think after what Bama did against Texas A&M, but I'll go him, and then I feel like the best player in the country this year, outside of maybe Jordan Davis, is probably Bijan Robinson for Texas, and I know his team has 3 losses, and they're not going to do anything on a national level, but I feel like at some point you got to reward the best players, and he's been one of the best.
He is that good. All right. We've hit just about the half-hour mark, and I think it's time that we bring up. We don't get to do this very often as Mizzou fans, but we don't get to bring up big Missouri Tiger successes. And for the first time in a long time, we finally got one. As the number 1 wide receiver in the nation, Luther Burden, out of East St. Louis High School in East St. Louis, Illinois, committed to Mizzou after a lengthy, long, drawn-out battle where he was originally committed to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Mizzou never stopped courting him.
It's a good thing they didn't, because
Yeah.
he changed his mind. He decided to go with the local team, the team that he's not very far from, only about 2 hours outside of Columbia. He's going to be a stud right away. You should start as a freshman, being the number one wide receiver at a school that he's the number 2 recruit ever.
Who's
Not
Harry Beckner?
Yeah, Dorial Green Beckham was
Dor-
is the number 1 recruit in school history. Luther Burns too, and there's the season has been awful for Mizzou, and
to say the least.
it feels like this is the type of energy that they needed to get going. We're gonna have some coaching changes in the offseason. They got a tough schedule again next year, but it's the SEC. You get a tough schedule every year. It feels like so. You gotta win the games eventually, and Luther's gonna help him do that.
I am beyond overjoyed that I am extremely, extremely happy.
Yep, this is big news for the school, and the recruiting trend is looking good. You just got to start seeing the product on the field.
All right. Well, before we go, you got any final further thoughts on what's kind of a mad week of college football?
Yeah, just keep your eye out for those trap games. Teams play a lot of teams playing games this week with big spreads right before their game of the year next week. So just keep an eye out for those. There's always something unexpected that happens in weeks that are supposed to suck in college football.
Right. And I've made note of that time and time again. Until then, I'll catch you guys on Monday. Liddy, good seeing you. I'll see you today. And until then, keep an eye on that Wake Forest game. I know it's not on network television. You got to get it on cable. It's on CBS Sports Network. That's a fun game. So make sure to tune into that if you're trying to get a good early game fix, because there's really not much else.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting one for sure.
All right. Until then, I will see you soon.